any financial asset. Oil in the ground, you're laying out cash now to get more cash back later on. And the question is how much are you going to get, when are you going to get it, and how sure are you? And when I calculate intrinsic value of a business, when we buy businesses, and whether we're buying all of a business or a little piece of a business, I always think we're buying the whole business because that's my approach to it. I look at it and say, what will come out of this business and when?
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule.
How do you find intrinsic value in a company?
Well, intrinsic value is the number that if you were all knowing about the future and could predict all the cash that a business would give you between now and Judgment Day, discounted at the proper discount rate, that number is what the intrinsic value of a business is. In other words, the only reason for making an investment and laying out money now is to get more money later on, right? That's what investing is all about. Now, when you look at a stock, when you look at a bond, so it means the United States government, it's very easy to tell how much you're going to get back. It says it right on the bond. It says when you get the interest payments, it says when you get the principal. So it's very easy to figure out the value of a bond. It can change tomorrow if interest rates change, but the cash flows are printed on the bond. The cash flows aren't printed on a stock certificate. That's the job of the analyst, is to print out, change that stock certificate, which represents an interest in the business, and change that into a bond and say, this is what I think it's going to pay out in the future.
Start young. The big thing about it is we started building this little snowball on top of a very long hill. So we started at a very early age in rolling the snowball down. And of course, the snowball, the nature of compound interest is it behaves like a snowball of sticky snow. And the trick is to have a very long hill, which means either starting very young or living to be very old. I would do it exactly the same way if I were doing it in the investment world. I mean, if I were getting out of school today and I had $10,000 to invest, I'd start with the A's. I would start going right through companies, and I probably would focus on smaller companies because I would be working with smaller sums, and there's more chance that something is overlooked in that arena. And it won't be like doing that in 1951 when you could leaf through and find all kinds of things that just leapt off the page at you. But that's the only way to do it. I mean, you have to buy businesses. Or little pieces of businesses called stocks, and you have to buy them at attractive prices, and you have to buy them, and you have to buy into good businesses, and that advice will be the same 100 years from now in terms of investing. That's what it's all about.
You get overstimulated in Wall Street, and you hear lots of things, and you may shorten your focus, and a short focus is not conducive to long profits. And here I can just focus on what businesses are worth. And I don't need to be in Washington to figure out what the Washington Post newspaper is worth, and I don't need to be in New York to figure out what some other company is worth. It's an intellectual process. And the less static there is in that intellectual process, really the better off you are.
What is the intellectual process?
The intellectual process is defining your area of competence in valuing businesses, and then within that area of competence, finding whatever sells at the cheapest price in relation to value. And there are all kinds of things I'm not competent to value.
But the biggest mistakes we've made by far, biggest mistakes I've made by far are mistakes of omission and not commission. I mean, it's the things I knew enough to do, they were within my circle of competence, and I was sucking my thumb. And that is really, those are the ones that hurt. They don't show up anyplace. And that never shows up under conventional accounting. But I know the cost of it. I passed it up. And those are the big mistakes. And I've had plenty of them. Omission is way bigger than commission. There's big opportunities in life have to be seized. We don't do very many things, but when we get the chance to do something that's right and big, we've got to do it. And even to do it in a small scale is just as big a mistake almost as not doing it at all. I mean, you've really got to grab them when they come, because you're not going to get 500 great opportunities. You would be better off if when you got out of school here, you got a punch card with 20 punches on it. And every financial decision you made, you used up a punch. You'd get very rich because you'd think through very hard each one. I mean, you went to a cocktail party and somebody talked about a company you didn't even understand what they did or couldn't pronounce the name, but they'd made some money last week and another one like it. You wouldn't buy it if you only had 20 punches on that card. In terms of our wholly owned businesses, we're not going to sell no matter how much anybody offers us for. I mean, if somebody offers us 3 times what something is worth at See's Candy, the Buffalo News, Borsheim's, whatever it may be, we're not going to sell it. I may be wrong in having that approach. I know I'm not wrong if I owned 100% of Berkshire because that's the way I want to live my life. I've got all the money I could possibly need. It just amounts to a change in the newspaper story on my obituary and the amount of money the foundation has. And to break off relationships with people I like and people that have joined me because they think it's a permanent home, to do that simply because somebody waves a big check at me would be like selling one of my children because somebody waved a big check. So I won't do that. And I want to tell my partners I won't do it so that they're not disappointed in me.
Well, if you're interested in business, I definitely think you ought to learn all the accounting you can by the time you're in your early 20s. Accounting is the language of business. Now, that doesn't mean it's a perfect language, so you have to know the limitations of that language as well as all aspects of it. So I would advise you to learn accounting, and I would advise you to be, in terms of part-time employment or anything else, work at a number of businesses. There's nothing like seeing how business operates to build your judgment in the future about businesses. When you understand what kind of things are very competitive and what kind of things are less competitive and why that works that way, all of that adds to your knowledge. So I would do a lot of reading. If you're interested in investments, I would take the accounting courses. I do a lot of reading about investments, and I would get as much business experience. I would talk business with people that are in business to find out what they think makes their operation tick or where they have problems and why. I just think you just kind of sop it up every place that you can.
If I were working with a small amount of money, the universe would be huge compared to the universe of possible ideas I work with now. You mentioned that 56 to 69 was the best period. Actually, my best period was before that. It was from right after I met Ben Graham in early 1951. But from the end of 1950 through the next 10 years, actually returns averaged about 50% a year. And I think they were 37 points better than the Dow per year, something like that. But I was working with a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of money. And so I would pour through volumes of businesses, and I would find one or two that I could put $10,000 into or $15,000 into that were just ridiculous. They were ridiculously cheap. And obviously, as the money increased, the universe of possible ideas started shrinking dramatically. The times were also better for doing it at that time. But I think if you're working with a small amount of money, with exactly the same background that Charlie and I have, same ideas, same whatever ability we have, I think you can make very significant sums. But as soon as you start getting the money up into the millions, many millions, the curve on expectable results falls off just dramatically.